One of the things that fascinates me the most is, well, the human brain. But what is even more fascinating is the fact that the very same biological principles that our brains use to make sense of our world, are the ones that lead us in change in our teams, change in our institutions. We live in very urgent times. All around us, institutions and leaders are facing unprecedented pressure to transform. Be it a corporation facing digital disruption in times of artificial intelligence, or a university reimagining education post-pandemic, or a community fighting for social change. The lesson is always the same: adapt or risk being left behind. Well, and yet, amid this pressure, we also feel paralyzed. The pace of change feels, quite dizzying. How do we lead in a world that won't sit still? How do we build momentum when every day brings a new challenge? My personal answer: our brain's design for adaptation and collaboration can guide leadership and institutional change. This is something I see in my everyday work as a computer scientist who works at the intersection between neuroscience and artificial intelligence, and as a vice president for digitalization and sustainability at the Technical University here in Berlin. Our brains, in fact, the product of millions of years of adaptation, hold profound insights on how we can lead and transform our institutions today. So let me share with you 3 neuroscience-based principles that have guided me as a leader: adaptive integration, collaborative processing, and purposeful iteration. Each of these principles reveals something about the workings of the brain, and each can guide us on how we can practice leadership and teamwork. Our brains are integration machines. At every moment, they combine signals from different senses, from our ears, from our eyes, from our skin, from our nose, to create a cohesive and unified experience. In a recent study, researchers found that people reacted faster when a sound combined with a visual cue came together. Faster, in fact, when only one of them would come alone. This makes sense, right? If you both see and hear a threat, you react faster, you run, you survive. This principle of adaptive integration is also mirrored in how organizations and teams, in fact, thrive. So research shows that diverse teams, composed of people with different backgrounds, different skills, different viewpoints, are much more innovative and also much better at solving complex problems, much better than homogeneous teams. I see this in my own lab every single day. A computer scientist, a biologist, a psychologist, an artist, an engineer, they approach the very same problem very differently. But when we combine these different viewpoints in the lab, we come with much more robust and creative solutions. They last longer. So diversity is not a decoration, it's our survival mechanism in the lab and in the real world. Just as neurons integrate different signals to strengthen their connections within the neural network, organizations integrate different minds to stay resilient. So effective leadership means embracing diversity and inclusion not as buzzwords, but as real strengths and functional advantages. It means welcoming the other opinion because it might reveal, in fact, a real blind spot. It means bringing people with different backgrounds and viewpoints at the same table when designing a new strategy. If you lead change in your organization, do next time ask yourself, whose voice haven't you integrated yet? The same principle that keeps our brain resilient also keeps an idea and a message alive. Integration builds basically backup plans. If one channel fails, the other one carries the message. Just as a brain that merges multiple senses can detect an opportunity or a threat much more effectively, an organization that taps into different viewpoints and perspectives can respond to change with greater resilience. The second principle is about connection and synchrony. Think of a time when you were part of a great team, at work, at a community project. You might describe it as on the same wavelength or in the zone together. And that's not just a metaphor. Neurologically, it's real. A recent study using brain scans showed that when team members truly collaborate and brainstorm together to find a solution, their brain activity starts to synchronize. And the more in sync they are, the more creative their solutions become. In another study, inter-brain synchrony, or basically how much their brain waves are in harmony, predicted team success better than individual IQs or their personality scores. So when we click, our brains enter a natural collaborative rhythm that can amplify our creativity and also problem solving. For organizations, collaborative processing means creating conditions for synchrony. It means minimizing control-based hierarchies where information flows literally only one direction. And people are, because of that, mostly kept in silos. It means creating open platforms for more dialogue and having leaders who share not just instructions, but pay attention and definitely listen more than they talk. So do create spaces for informal connections, because those moments, they build trust, they build alignment. When teams feel safe and connected, they enter a neural flow state together. The result is more creativity, stronger commitment, and faster execution. Like a jazz band riffling in perfect rhythm, a connected team listens, adapts, and builds on each other. A kind of synchrony emerges immediately, and a new music is created. So that's collaborative processing in action. The final principle is perhaps the most encouraging one. It's my favorite one because I do it every day. Small changes over time add up. In the brain, every time we repeat a task or practice a skill, we strengthen certain neural connections. Over time, these very small adjustments add up to significant change, which we know as a process called neuroplasticity. But the cue is, this does not happen instantly. One famous experiment showed that when rats, yes, rats, learned a new skill, like reaching for a food reward in a, let's say, new specific way in a maze, their brains did not create stronger connections immediately. In fact, on day one, even though the rats learned the basic task immediately, there were no detectable significant changes in increase in the synapse strength. But only after several days of deliberate practice, the rat's motor cortex neurons, basically the neurons that are responsible for that basic task, they started forming new synapses and stronger connections. In other words, repetition and incremental effort were required to rewire the brain. And this is the same for us now. Teams strengthen their collaborations and capabilities through repeated practice, reflection, and also improvement. When again I started my new lab, I certainly had a lot of big ideas, huge ambitions. We will map the brain. We will revolutionize artificial intelligence using cognitive neuroscience. Big visions. It was good. But I quickly learned that real progress came through steady and iterative work, one experiment at a time, and once inside building on the other one. In practice, purposeful iteration means celebrating the small wins, learning from the small failures. It means setting up feedback loops, trying something new on a small scale, gathering data, refining, trying again. This is how momentum is built, neuron by neuron, step by step. It's tempting to wait for a perfect grand strategy to execute all at once. But in a complex, changing world like the one that we live in, we often don't have that luxury. Instead, the brain teaches us that practice and persistence are key. Over time, small changes lead to transformation. Every big idea, a new product, a social movement, institutional reform, they all succeed only after countless iterations and failures along the way. So the good news is our brains embrace this mode. They are literally designed to tweak and learn continuously. And so are we. As I close, I want to leave you with a hopeful call to action. Change, especially at an institutional level, will always will feel challenging. It's normal to feel doubt, to feel that progress is painfully slow, or to question whether collaboration is worth the effort. But I urge you to remember that the blueprint for navigating change is within us, in the very anatomy and physiology of our brains. Our biology shows us that we are adaptive, we are social, and yes, capable of learning for a lifetime. We are literally wired to adapt to new realities, to connect with others, to grow bit by bit, neuron by neuron. With this mindset, leadership becomes less about exerting control. It becomes more about cultivating conditions, bringing in new perspectives, building trust and alignment, and encouraging ongoing experimentation. Let's be the leaders who integrate, who collaborate, who iteratively experiment. And let's recognize that we don't have to have all the answers. No single neuron in the brain does. But we can create the conditions, the network that can help us to find the right answers together. Our brains have given us the blueprint. Now it's up to us to build momentum together. Thank you.